So in this video, I'm going to go through my training, hopefully in its entirety, in terms of what volume I do, what intensity I do, gym sessions, recovery, nutrition, building into a race compared to base training. Every single question that you might have is hopefully answered in this video. And of course, if there is more questions to ask, then just comment them down below and I will make sure I get back to every single question in this video to try and give a full picture of my training. I am a 61:26 half marathon runner, 28:12 for the 10K and 13:46 for the 5K. And my training structure is high volume, similar to how the likes of Jakob Ingebrigtsen trains, with the double threshold method, with a few tweaks here and there for training for the half marathon rather than 1500. And on average, I probably run about 200 kilometers a week. It varies. My highest mileage week a few weeks ago was 211 kilometers, and my lowest mileage week in base training has been around 183 kilometers. That is mostly easy running, but also double threshold days, gym sessions, and some quicker stuff like strides and speed work as well, especially as I get closer to races. And a quick disclaimer, even though I've been running for the best part of 20 years at this point, I think I started when I was 6, so a long time, I don't know everything. And I think any pro you see talking about training, or any runner you see talking about training, it is usually a fair judgment to believe that they don't know everything, and you should go out and also find other sources of information and education and just different training methods. So for what I'm about to say is from my personal experience, and yes, there will be science to back up what I'm saying, but that doesn't mean that I might not misquote some very specific science down the way, because at the end of the day, I'm not a professor. There is certain people out there who know more than me. The way I train is completely different to the way someone else who might be racing trains. It is more about building a philosophy that suits you rather than just copying some other person's training. So firstly, my training structure, and this is what type of training I do mostly in base period, and I'll also explain how that changes as I get close to a race. So Monday, very simply, 2 easy runs will add up to around 24K in volume. One of those runs I will usually do 6 times 100 meters stride, and one of those runs would also be heat training, which is where I wear a heat suit or a lot of layers and run on the treadmill, making sure I'm monitoring my temperature. And there's some benefit around heat training in terms of some more aerobic fitness, from mitochondria development, more red blood cells, higher blood plasma volume, some more hemoglobin. Again, I'm not gonna go into the exact science of it. It's just studies show that it's good for fitness, and I've been doing quite a lot of heat training. Tuesday is almost always a double threshold day. So warm up in the morning on the treadmill, and then I do usually 6 times 2K with 2 minutes jog recovery, cool down, eat a lot of food, and then in the evening I'll either do 400 meter reps or 1K reps. If it's 1K reps, it'll be 12 by 1K with 75 seconds rest, usually a bit quicker than morning, so it'd be LT1 in the morning and then LT2 in the evening, which very simply is marathon pace in the morning and half marathon pace in the evening. Or the 400s would be slightly quicker with 30 seconds rest. So they would be a bit closer towards 10K pace. Wednesday would be a medium long run in the morning, so around 80 to 90 minutes of running, and then I'd do another heat training session that evening. Thursday would be the same as Monday, an easy run with strides, and then a double with a heat training stimulus. And Friday at the minute has been my specific day. So building up to the Valencia Half Marathon, which was last week, where I ran 61:26, this was a half marathon specific session. My best one, or my favorite one, was 6 times 3 kilometers with a lap jog recovery, building from LT1 down to faster than half marathon pace. I think I started at 9:06 for the first 3K and finished at 8:26 for the final 3K. A lot of session volume really get me ready to handle the half marathon distance. Saturday would be the same as Monday and Thursday without the strides, so it would just be 24K volume with 1 heat session. And then Sunday would be a long run session, and that long run session, the most common one I do is a progressive run, so it's 8K at a certain pace, and then the next 8K is faster, and the final 8K is faster again. And then sometimes I do some strides at the end of that, which, without going into too much detail again, is about recruiting more muscle fibers and training them more aerobically, because you're a lot more fatigued and depleted, so your body needs to recruit more fast twitch fibers and train them aerobically. That session is usually around 32 kilometers. It could be a bit more, could be a bit less, depending on what variation I do. I feel like I need to explain a bit more why I do long run over maybe a double threshold day, which Jakob Ingebrigtsen, as I do take a lot of inspiration from his training and the works of Marit Visbakken with double threshold. He does 2 double threshold days a week. Because I'm training for the half marathon, 10K and marathon soon, the benefit I get from doing a long, prolonged effort in terms of developing mitochondria seems to be a bit better for that, and also practicing durability and fueling for a longer race as well. Core, I like to do twice a week, and gym I like to try and do twice a week. I'm very bad at keeping consistent with gym. Usually I definitely do it on a Sunday, and I'd also want to do it mostly on a Wednesday. A lot of the time that Wednesday session does get forgotten about or just not done. And then core I try to do on a Monday and a Thursday. So that is almost 4 strength sessions in a week. So the reason I structure it like that is because between the Tuesday and the Friday, with a double threshold session on the Tuesday, it allows a bit more time for the Friday specific session. For recovery, I've just noticed I feel much better with doing that session on a Friday rather than a Thursday. It also allows me to do a medium long run and gym on a Wednesday, whereas if I trained Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, it'd be harder to fit that in. So how does this structure change as I get towards a race? This is where I would change it to Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and that would be a double threshold session on a Tuesday, a specific session on a Thursday, and then a specific session on a Saturday. So if I'm building up for a 5K, the final month or 2 weeks would be double threshold session, and let's say 15 times 400 with 60 seconds recovery at 3K pace. It's just a very broad session I've just thrown out there, or like K reps at 5K pace. And then the Saturday would be something similar, maybe some hills thrown in there as well. So it would be a bit more of an intense work. So when I say specific, obviously half marathon specific is still pretty slow, relatively speaking, but 5K and 10K specific work, I usually end up running quicker than race pace because I prefer to do that to really make sure I tick all the boxes in terms of training my mechanics to go faster and just getting the body ready for race day, because you do need to be able to run faster than race pace for it to feel remotely comfortable. So I like to do that a lot as I get ready to race. So tracking my training, I'm a big data nerd. I love looking at my data, whether that's the cadence, heart rate, if I'm sleeping, HRV, resting heart rate and things like that. I am using the COROS Pace Pro at the minute, and I also use the COROS armband and the core heat sensor around my bicep to measure heart rate and skin temperature, and that gets an algorithm for core temperature as well to really assess the heat training stimulus. For me, COROS I've been using maybe for about 4 years now, and since I guess the COROS Pace 1, which at the time was the lightest running watch I've ever used with a Velcro strap. It was just felt like there was nothing on your wrist. And I've just used it since. I think the app is really good to track what you need. What I look for the most for recovery is resting heart rate during sleep and also HRV. I feel like I have a lot of theories in terms of not eating too late, not as much screen time before bed. I did actually do some hot and cold sauna and plunge pool stuff the other day, and that seemed to improve my HRV as well. So there's quite a lot of variations that I'm still trying to get on lock to improve heart rate variability. But then also there's the resting heart rate side of things as well. I usually find that resting heart rate and HRV, if something is wrong, it's quite easy to then, oh, maybe I'm getting ill, maybe I'm too fatigued. It's almost like one of the early signs to take a step back or try and recover more, try and eat more, or just take a few easy days if there is some data that is going wrong. So I really like to keep on track of that. Then obviously during a session as well, heart rate is just a good metric of intensity. It can vary depending on if you're fatigued, if you're fresh, and a lot of other things, but most of the time heart rate data can back up how you're feeling and then tell you maybe you need to pick it up or slow down. Ultimately, I do go off pace, but I have these other metrics to be able to track and also compare. In terms of how I train 200 kilometers a week and then try to bridge the gap for a 5K, 10K, half marathon or marathon, it is mostly the same training, which is high volume, a lot of threshold work, and a lot of focus on just improving aerobic fitness while still keeping in touch with the mechanical side of things with strides, drills, and gym. Let's say an A goal race is 6 weeks away, I will start incorporating more specific work. So the easiest way to explain that is if it's a 10K, a lot of my training will be base training, and as I transition closer, more of that training will be 10K pace or faster. So that Friday specific session would turn into something that's a bit more aggressive. And then also Tuesday might change as well, where I'll do threshold in the morning and come track in the evening, I'll end up doing the 400 meter reps, but go a bit more aggressive, have a bit more rest. So for me, it's all about, if you had a graph, which hopefully if I've got enough time to edit, I'll put it on the screen. You kind of start volume and intensity, and as you get closer to race day, they kind of creep a bit closer together. Not direct, because I would kind of still increase volume a bit and increase intensity and then dip it a bit and cross over. That graph will probably not be on screen because that sounds like it's complicated to make, but hopefully that explains a bit better that intensity increases closer to race day, regardless of what that is, because I think the benefits of working on that side of things, whether that's VO2 max work, which I won't do in base training, but I will do quite aggressively as I get closer to race day. I also find running faster really helps improve leg tension, And leg tension is probably one of the most underrated things in running. It's essentially your body's ability to use the impact on the floor to then push off again and continue your stride down the road. And it also increases efficiency, makes you faster, makes paces feel easier. And doing harder, faster sessions do increase or improve leg tension, or should do. The obviously downside to that is more impact is technically going to lead to more injury risk. You've got to be careful. But I do notice a massive difference. Say if I do a race the week before another race, or I do a really hard sprint session or a harder like 5K pace session, then the needle moves quite a lot from just doing base training. I notice a massive jump in improvement as I start doing that training, but also that jump in improvement wouldn't happen if I didn't already have the base training as well. So you can't neglect one or the other. You need to do both. And I would say for most people out there, if you're training for actually probably any distance, if you're not a sub, let's say 16-minute 5K runner, I would say that base training is by far the most valuable thing. Things I'm not doing enough of. Running obviously isn't one. I'm training a lot. But as I mentioned, gym, I would like to be doing twice a week. I'm only doing once a week most of the time. And also core, even though I say I'm doing it twice a week, that also probably gets neglected a bit as well. So they're the obvious. If I made this video a week ago or 2 weeks ago, when I actually filmed it for the first time until my SD card got corrupted, I would have also said mobility and pre-run activation. I have started doing that a lot more consistency. So for me, that looks like 90s, where you rotate your hips. It might be some nerve flossing with your hamstring, which is an easy Google search. I find that really helps sort of make your legs feel a bit more stretched out, and it helps with some nerve issues. And then I do some activation. So that might be single leg glute bridge holds and things like that to really get the glutes and hips fired up before a session or run. If I'm doing that every day for a year, that's a lot of pre-run mobility, which should help improve mechanics. Obviously very marginal, but when you get to this point, you take any marginal gain you can. And also linked to that, I would say stretching. I find a lot of how I feel and how I race is actually dictated by how stiff my hips and back are, because like anyone in this modern day and age, I am someone who does this a lot and sat down right now with bad posture. So my neck gets stiff, my back gets stiff, and I find that really dictates how easy a pace feels. I'm not sure if that means that my mechanics are getting lengthened or if I'm just more relaxed, but it really seems to help. So as I get closer towards race day, I do stretch a lot, but I should be doing that all the time. In theory, that means I would be running quicker in training and feeling better in training, which then should also make me faster on race day as well. At the minute, I'm only getting faster on race day, because if you saw my stretching routine, like I'd literally, before the Valencia Half, I was probably stretched for about 3 hours the day before, which isn't advisable. That massive change in your body probably isn't a good thing, but for me, it made me feel a lot looser and just better. Other than that, I would say consistent nutrition. It is something I really try to do, but it's not as dialed as I need it to be. So in double threshold days, am I having the exact same foods, pre-session, post-session at the right times? For me, that would be a lot of calories. I tend to eat around 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day. On a double threshold day with a lot more volume, I need to make sure that that's probably topped up quite a bit more. And also a lot of that should be focused around my session. So pre-session fueling, during the session fueling, and then post-session fueling. Straight away I try to get carbs and protein in as soon as possible, and then try to have a big full meal whenever I can, hopefully within the first 30 minutes to an hour. And that is the same. If I finish an easy run, I make sure I eat straight away. If I finish the session, I make sure I eat straight away. I don't train fasted either. I dabbled in training partly fasted some days a week because there's some benefits to mitochondrial development. The fat oxidization side of that, I don't really see a benefit in. I'm using carbohydrates as the vast majority of my fuel source. The downsides of being fasted is just too great. It fatigues you a lot more. Your body is basically playing catch up with fuel, probably too much of a high risk, especially when I'm also running as much as I do. Now on to the most common questions that I've been asked about my training. I put an Instagram story up and just asked people to ask questions, which I'm gonna go through. If there's any more, like I said, comment them on this video because that is how I'm gonna reply to them. I kind of get too many DMs and questions on Instagram, so it's kind of hard to reply to every single one. So firstly, what's your warm-up drills routine before a race or session to prime your legs for speed? Before a session, that is a 14-minute to 15-minute jog. I then do some drills, which will be A skips, B skips, leg swings, chasing the chickens, where you kind of go down and stretch your hamstring a bit and roll forward. I do some lunges with a twist and do some glute activations with single leg like bridge or single leg glute bridges. And then I would do some variation of a 60-meter stride and then 400 meters of 60-meter strides, 100 and something meter jog, 60-meter stride, jog, and then I like to do a 100-meter stride at rep pace at the end. So it's 400 meters of alternating between fast and slow. Before a race, that changes to the same warm-up in terms of 14 to 15 minutes. And then I'd do the slower amount of strides. So that would be leg swings, lunges, and things like that. And then I'd do a 3-minute threshold, which will be usually around 310 per kilometer. So even slower than, I guess, marathon pace, if we were classing it as that. And then I'd do my faster drills and then do the same strides again. So 400 meters of on-off strides. And of course, with the same activations in there. I feel like warm-up is neglected by a lot of people. Like your heart rate needs to be ready to go. Your body needs to be ready to go to match the effort. A lot of people think I don't want to get too tired. And I think the better I've got running, the more my warm-up has increased in terms of effort and intensity. You've just got to make sure that you stood on the start line, recovered from that again. But if your heart rate's a bit high, as long as your legs are fresh and you're ready to go, I think that's better than not doing anything or doing a bit of a light jog and that's it. And then your heart rate's just lower and you're just colder on the start line, because then you've got to play catch up. As soon as the pace changes, your heart rate and your body is just trying to catch up to what it needs to be at. Whereas if you've done the correct warm-up, your body's almost kind of there. So that's why I like to do it. I've noticed a big benefit in that. What is the most important part of your recovery? Post-training, fuel straight away. Carbohydrates especially, and then protein. It's a non-negotiable for me. I have to do it. And then also sleep. I can't nap, but I just try to sleep a lot in the evening, over 8 hours if I can. I feel like I've hit a plateau and I'm not making any progress. What do you suggest to break it? You need to be honest with yourself and go, am I plateauing because I'm pushing too hard? And usually if you push too hard, then you don't actually get the adaptations because you're not recovering sufficiently enough, or your body can't recover to get all the adaptations. So if that's the case, you need to restructure your training, which can be really hard if you're being so tuned to pushing a certain amount and then you have to go, I need to let my foot off the gas. A lot of people think you'll just lose fitness. Most of the time, that's usually when you come out the other end and feel a bit fresher. So if that might be tapering for a week, or even just easy running for a week, or having a few days off, sometimes doing that and then coming back makes a big difference with the plateau if you are training too hard. If you're not training too hard, or I guess that's subjective, I really find having a down week where you do more intense sessions, going back to the leg tension thing, moves the needle. If this is more of a long-term plateau, I would say, how can I add a new stimulus or change the stimulus? Maybe you could be doing more mileage, obviously build that up safely, or you might not be doing as much intensity. And if you've hit a plateau, it's probably good to add a bit more intensity in. Gym work, core work. There's a lot of different ways to improve your running. It's just finding usually what stimulus you're not currently getting and trying to add that in the safest way possible. So for me right now, as I mentioned, I'm trying to do more gym work, more mobility work. For race day, that should help. I'm doing everything I'm already doing, and then I'm adding things what are low risk. So hopefully that will help on race day. There's so many things that help a plateau. It could be nutrition related, it could be recovery related. There's everything. Sometimes I can't even explain it. I've had bad races after bad races, and then all of a sudden it clicks, and then every race after that is great. Nothing changes in my training. Sometimes happens. Could even be a confidence thing. At what length of session do you start using fuel, or do you just keep it for long runs? If I'm training a double threshold day, I'll fuel both times, regardless of the length. That could be, for some reason, reduced session in the morning. Even if it's 5K tempo, I would fuel during that 5K tempo, or definitely before and after with additional fuel, whether that's a gel or a carb mix. If I'm running for over an hour, I will also take gel or carbohydrates on. And if it's a single session under 10K, I might not fuel, but I probably still will during the session as well. So there isn't really an answer. I just try to fuel when I know I need it, and it doesn't really matter what kind of session that is. Most of the time, I need more fuel. And the final one, what I got asked a lot, is top tips to avoid injury while maintaining high mileage. So sleep and nutrition, extremely important. Don't train fasted, don't train overly fatigued, don't push too hard. Recover well, so sleep well, eat a lot of carbs and protein, never be underfueled. That's a massive part of it, it's almost all of it. But then I would say running shoes play a massive part as well. I love high stack, high cushion running shoes. Occasionally, I step down out of them to get the correct mechanical work in, because a lot of time, these super soft or high cushion shoes don't have the mechanical effects that maybe the lower profile or firmer shoes or worse shoes have in terms of helping you develop the right ankle stiffness, Achilles stiffness, just leg stiffness overall. So I do switch it up, but most of the time I'm running in highly cushioned shoes. And that's just because you're taking thousands of steps on the road each day. It's a lot of impact. So especially if you're injury prone, a good high cushion shoe helps reduce that impact, which should prevent impact-related injuries. It's pretty straightforward, good running shoes. And that also might be specifically good running shoes, although I would say it's a broad thing where high cushion does work. Some people might have a different foot shape, so you can develop injuries like plantar fasciitis because of the way the arch is in the foot. You might just be making your foot sit in a weird position. So you need to find what works for you with shoes, but definitely high stack or good cushion is the best place to start. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and hopefully it wasn't too of a multi-directional thing and you can get information out of it. I tried to make it as honest as possible in terms of how I view my training and how I structure it, rather than making this cleaned, pristine, really sharp, engaging thing or video, which would have been great to clip on TikTok. I think I'm gonna struggle to make clips out of this, but this is my view on training.